Okay. Thank you. I'm Penny Dye, Vice Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Brian Sullivan is our chair, is unavailable. I'm going to call the meeting to order right at 12:31. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. This is an action item. Could somebody make a motion, please, for approval?
Penny, do we need to do a roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry, for attendance. Yeah, we don't actually, yeah, I will do a roll. Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to do a roll call vote on those present for that are on the trust. Please respond in the affirmative. Forrest Bell.
Here.
Thank you. Abby De Molina.
I'm here.
Megan Browers.
Here.
Thank you. Tom Dixon.
Here.
And the chair is present, obviously. For staff, Ellis Ramos.
Here.
And Tracy McDonald.
Here.
Vicky, nice to see you.
Good to see you as well. Here.
And then we have members of the public in attendance as well. I'm not going to do a roll call on you guys. I don't have to read the preamble anymore according to the town, but I will just remind people to have your comments come through the chair, please, and raise your hand to be recognized. And we will hear typically from the board first and then from the public. So is there a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tom Dixon. Thank you, second for the second. All those in favor by roll call vote. Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Thank you, Forrest Bell.
Aye.
Thank you, Abby De Molina.
Aye.
Megan Browers.
Aye.
Thank you, and the chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda, this is for items not listed on the agenda, is public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak about anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. This is an action item. The minutes are for the meetings of January the 21st, 2025, February 4th, 2025, and February 21st, 2025. Hoping people had a chance to read them and send in any feedback. Are there any questions, additions, deletions? No, hearing none, could I entertain a motion, please, for approval of all three of those at once?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Abby. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Forrest. By roll call, those in favor, Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Thank you, Forrest Bell.
Aye.
Abby De Molina.
Aye.
Thank you, Megan Browers.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Next is an announcement, number 5. Tracy, do you want to handle this, please?
Sure. Penny reminded us that maybe some terms were coming up. And so we're making an announcement that the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust will have one open at-large seat beginning June 30th, 2025. Community members are interested in supporting affordable housing initiatives are encouraged to consider applying.
And can we apply to the select board? Is that correct?
Ellis, can you help out with that? Do they submit it to Erica? Yeah, so it should be submitted to Erica Mooney.
And just for clarity, I think is this the seat that's currently held by Meg?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
And I think the update on affordable housing trust fund proposals, those are the current RFPs that are out. Maybe Rachel Field can give us up a date with those.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Go ahead, Rachel.
Just an update on our RFPs that are currently out. The submission deadline for the bundle request, which includes the development of the properties at 135 and 137 Orange, 12 and 12R Bartlett Road, and 16 Vesper Lane, is set for March 14th. The contract is supposed to be awarded on June 12th. And The other request for proposal for 7 Amelia Drive, that one has been extended from, the submission deadline has been extended from March 14th to May 5th. And the contract award date has been extended from June 12th to July 8th. And this change is due to the fact that 7 Amelia is, there is a warrant article at town meeting to dispose into the trust's name.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you earlier when I was doing staff.
That's okay.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on either of those items? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item 6, which is the subsidized housing inventory list, or SHI list, for an update. Tracy, are you going to do that as well?
Sure. So on behalf of the trust, I recently submitted 3 units to the EOHLC to be added to the SHI list. And I'm happy to report that they have confirmed and added 7 Sandplain, I think it's Place, and the 2 remaining units on Waite Drive that are being developed by Habitat for Humanity. I think that's, Ellis, you'll have to remind me, is that number 9 Waite Drive?
Just for clarity, everybody, it's the duplex that they're about to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I
And
think
so-
it's 9A and 9B or 7A or 7.
Yeah, that would be 7.
Those are
Yeah,
some-
7A and 7B. Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, item number 7, Stephen Maury is here, who came earlier to another meeting to present some conceptual development plans that have changed quite a bit since you were here last. And so what we're going to do is listen and ask questions. We're not voting on anything today. Okay, so Stephen, you want to go ahead and can somebody enable you to share your screen, please? Ellis, maybe? Who's host? Is Ellis, are you the
I
host?
think I have it. I think I've got the power. There we
Excellent.
go.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So go ahead and take it away. And Stephen, do you want us to ask questions as we roll or at the end, or how would you like to do this?
Yeah, ask at any point that they come up. And Penny, and to everyone here, thank you for the audience. Thank you for setting this meeting and allowing me to present. This presentation and my proposal is related to properties that I own at 13 and 13A Woodland Drive. The total site comprises about 5 acres. It's a little less than that, 4.8 acres. And it is the subject, the properties are the subject of warrant articles to rezone and also to add the properties to the town sewer district. But what I'd like to focus on today is what is available in terms of development potential without any zoning approvals, without adding the properties to sewer. So those things, may or may not come to pass. And I'm encouraged to see that some of the members of the neighborhood are here, and I look forward to their input. We've had a series of very productive meetings and frank discussions over the last few weeks, including yesterday. But we don't yet have consensus about, what might be supported by the neighborhood in terms of zoning change or adding any or all of the property to the sewer district. And that's subject to vote for town meeting in any case. So for the purposes of the discussion today, happy to answer questions about all of it, but I'd like to focus on what the potential is right now, current zoning, current status. And so what I'm sharing with you on the screen right now is page 2 of the 2 conceptual plans, which I shared with Ellis late in the day yesterday. I apologize for the lateness of that, but I'm here to walk through everything anyway. So what you have before you is a plan which was approved last September to divide the properties into 5 buildable lots, including 4 lots labeled lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are in the residential 20 R20 zoning district. that, that is, these lots are approximately the same size as the other lots on Woodland Drive. And so each of them would support, under current zoning, a duplex and an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. And my understanding is that each of the 3 dwellings on each lot could be held in separate ownership. And so that would be my goal under this development plan. I mean, my preference would be that all of the dwellings built on this site are freestanding, but that's not possible. Maybe it's possible. It's not as easy to achieve with the moratorium on tertiary dwellings. And so what you have before you shows in the blue boxes a duplex, and in this sort of mustard color an ADU. And an ADU, for those who haven't studied it much, is very similar to our tertiary dwelling, which we've had over the last few years. You can have up to 900 square feet of living area, provided it's no greater than 50% of the living area of the principal dwelling on the same lot. And so the total site here, the 13 and 13A Woodland Drive, is not in the sewer district. It would be serviced by septic, and there would be a total allowance of 31 bedrooms for the site. Each of the individual R20 lots would be able to have 3 bedrooms. However, through the use of shared septic systems, we could allocate more bedrooms to each of these lots. And so this proposal imagines a scenario where we have 6 bedrooms allocated to each of these 4 R20 lots, with the concept that there would be a 3-bedroom unit and a 2-bedroom unit attached in a duplex, and a 1-bedroom ADU. And, you know, this development can go forward with or without any zoning change or adding to the sewer map, as I said, and it can go forward without support from the trust or from the town or from any other subsidizing agency. But I would not be able to restrict the sale prices or restrict the occupancy of the dwellings in the way that I would like to do. And so as a reminder, last fall, I came to special town meeting with a much different plan, a much more intense development plan, where there would have been 40 dwellings on the site. Under the current zoning change request, there could be as many as 9 lots. But again, focusing on what we have here today, we're talking about 4 lots, 12 dwellings. I can't build this lower number of dwellings and commit to selling them at the restricted prices without some financial support. And so I'm coming to you all today to consider whether you would support a project like this, where the development is in keeping with the current zoning. It you know, it can go forward no matter what happens at town meeting, but in order to make sure that these homes get to the people that I hope that they, you know, can get to, and that you know, we have the greatest need, I think, in this missing middle, this, you know, attainable home ownership segment of our community. And so this is an opportunity to do that, you know, to create a 100% home ownership and 100% price restricted neighborhood, which which we only have one other example of on the island in Sachem's Path. And so, you know, the exact design of these homes and the placement of the homes, this is, you know, very conceptual at this stage. So I wouldn't, you know, want to get into detail on those things, but the concept of a duplex and a freestanding unit on each of these 4 dwellings, that is, you know, that would be the plan. And to give you a sense of what the request might be for financial support, I'd be looking for approximately $500 per square foot in the form of a grant. And, you know, not asking for any additional loans to make this project work. And I wrote in the summary, which I sent just yesterday, that I would propose that any grant funding be secured in the form of a loan on the property to be forgiven as units are developed and sold.
Stephen, I need to interrupt just here, because we are not in a position to have an in-depth discussion about funding until after town meeting. I just want to be really clear about that, because there's some articles at
Okay.
town meeting that are, depending on which way they go, going to impact that going forward for the trust.
Yeah, I'm not asking for commitments.
Yep.
You know, I'm asking for opinions. I'm looking for, you know, attitude of individuals and of the board about, you know, whether this is the type of project you all might support.
I have a question about lot 5. You talked about 1 through 4. Can you tell us what's going on with lot 5, please?
Not with any certainty. I mean,
Because it's dependent on the sewer.
it's dependent on sewer and it's depending on zoning. I mean, as it stands right now, that roughly 3-acre tract is eligible only for 3 dwellings,
Okay,
which doesn't allow me to, you know, do what I'd like to do with the property. And to, let me see, I'll change what I'm sharing here. Page 1 of the 2 conceptual plans that I shared shows what might happen to the property if rezoning is allowed, if Article 61 is adopted and the entire property is put into the R20 district, which would match the rest of Woodland Drive. This plan shows how 9 lots may be created. And what this plan also shows is 2 dwellings on each of the 9 lots. That's a proposal that I've made to neighbors, which is to permanently restrict the site to a number of dwellings which is lower than what might otherwise be allowed under zoning.
so the first plan you showed us is what would be permitted without any kind of zoning change, waivers, or town sewer, basically. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And I'll just speak for myself, which is we fully have supported things that are done within the context of current zoning in the past. And I don't see the difficulty with this as I did with the previous proposal. That's just my personal opinion. Does the board have any questions at this point about that particular part of Stephen's presentation? Questions, comments, suggestions?
Penny, I would just second what you say, that I think realistically like, if Stephen, you are looking for support or whatever, I think it would be a lot easier for us to do something within the current zoning, just because it's a lot more palatable and I think less confusing. So I think Penny brings up a great point, that, you know, maybe we use that as like a starting point.
It's also been historically what we've done.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, Megan, you have a question? There you go.
Comment. I just want to say that I think this is a really wonderful proposal to put forward to the community and to the board. I don't really know that there's many developers out there looking to create an affordable housing unit similar to Satcham's. So I commend you for that work. If I were voting on this, I would probably vote in favor, knowing what I know today, but we're not doing that. So I just want to say that I support the work that you're doing. And I just have a question for you, Stephen. Have you, in light of the recent news for potential spike in construction costs, would that affect your request?
Again, it's an estimated request, but I have firm pricing that's updated as of 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's not updated as of midnight this morning when, tariffs went into effect, so there's some, some room for movement, I guess. But one thing that and I know we can't get into the specifics of how something like this might be funded or the structure of the financing, but I'd like to work with the town and with the trust to establish a new protocol for how projects like this one are supported by the town, and have the builder be at risk for any cost overages. And so, the thing that immediately came to mind was, yes, I'm seeking grant funding, but I'd like it to be in the form of a forgivable loan where, it's released in portions as units are delivered.
Yeah,
And so-
progress
yeah.
payment, yeah.
And can I ask a follow-up question, please? I may have missed this when you presented, Stephen, but would any of these units be year-round deed restricted?
Yeah, so, and thank you, because I talk about this a lot and I sometimes forget which parts in a certain discussion I have mentioned and haven't. So that's a really important piece. So this development plan can go forward without subsidy and without restriction on the occupancy and the affordability. With the subsidy, I would like to restrict at 240% AMI or below, and certainly to year-round occupancy. And I'm working on an updated set of deed restrictions, which I recorded on the property last year, where there was a protocol for how the properties would be made available for sale. So at initial sale and upon resale, there would be a number of agencies, including the town and nonprofits on the island, so that there's a window of 60 days maybe where certain people are notified that the properties are for sale before they're advertised to the open market. And so, the idea being that these homes are not only for the year-round community, but for people who work in, essential positions in the community.
So Stephen, not exactly strictly municipal preference, but kind of like a head start is what you're talking about?
Exactly. Yep. And there were, reasons, legal reasons why that was the case. Initially, like over 2 years ago, the idea was it would be just for municipal employees, and there were challenges with that. I think it started maybe just public safety. And so anyway, it's gotten a bit broader than that, but this Head Start first notification period is a model that I can follow from Abram Quarry, and Beach Plum has something like this. So we feel confident that it's something that's legal to do.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions then. Who would be in charge of overseeing the property going forward in terms of compliance? I mean, would there be an entity who holds the restriction, all that kind of stuff? Have you thought about that?
I have, and so that was part of the trouble in recording the deed restrictions last year, was that I intended for the town to, enforce the restrictions, but the town hadn't accepted the responsibility to do that. And so Christy reached out to me a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago now, suggesting that I get the deed restrictions over to town council for their review, and so that they can be hopefully accepted and endorsed by the select board before town meeting. I would also intend that there be a homeowners association for this property specifically and we would fund that so, they could enforce their own restrictions. But ultimately, my hope would be that there would be enforcement vested with the town, and then whether or not there needs to be another sort of monitoring agency, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board, any more questions from board members? All right, Stephen, do you want to keep presenting here? I mean, you're only partially through this, I think, right?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear some feedback, not about the density, because, that part, like I know can be done. But I'd like to hear comments about, whether this sort of funding is feasible. And I understand that, until we get through town meeting, we don't know about the availability of funds, but is this the type of project that if you had the funding, and I came back to you after town meeting, is it the type of thing you want to work with a private developer to provide grant funding? It's not something that there's a lot of precedent for. So is it something people are comfortable with?
I can only answer that by saying it depends, right? On more details. But overall, I mean, the trust is not in the business of development. That is not what we are to do. We have been funding projects, whether it's habitat, housing or closing assistance. We funded the recent Wiggles Way development in a combination of grants and loans. And, now we have these RFPs out, which we will be funding some of that once we have a respondent that's acceptable to the town. So, I really don't want to be in the business of development. It's outside of our area of responsibility. And I think working in the private sector is the only way to go. I guess that's how I would answer that. Anybody else? Yeah, Tom Dixon.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I agree. I think also without hearing from the finance director and his team and town council, once the deed restrictions are looked over, I mean, I'd much prefer that Vicky and her team work on the deed restrictions to make sure those are in keeping with our other ones and they're suitable moving forward. So without those, I think it's really difficult to speculate at all on it.
Or to commit probably to the level that maybe would be meaningful to you, Stephen, at this point. Thank you. Anybody else? On the board? No? Okay.
Penny, through you, can I request that Vicky provide any general commentary about, whether and how something like this might be structured?
I'm going to let Vicky answer that, but yeah, it's fine with me. Vicky?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had an opportunity to look at the restriction that had been put on last year, which I found was deficient in a lot of areas as far as the details, who was going to hold the restriction, and how it would be enforced, and just compliance in general with procedure and year-round restrictions, affordable restrictions. So, I certainly would want to have an opportunity to have a draft that you would be comfortable sending to us to review. I know that you had mentioned that you're looking for a review before town meeting, and I'm not sure that we're able to commit to that type of timeline, quite frankly. There's a lot of issues that we have to deal with before town meeting, as well as the particularities of your restriction and your project. So I certainly couldn't commit to being able to say that we would have a response back to you before town meeting, or even a final version, that may take some negotiations. So, but much of it will depend upon too, whether the trust is going to be interested in supporting the project. But I certainly would be happy to take a look at it and offer some suggestions or comments.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll just say that, I understand there's a lot on town council's plate, but, without the opportunity for town council or without the commitment from town council to review a set of deed restrictions, which, might be in a proper form in the 2 months here before town meeting, voters aren't going to know what they might get. And, I'm not asking for a commitment of funding, but if we can't even get restrictions reviewed and in a proper form, then that's, going to be probably not from the viability of the project, but from a standpoint of, is this going to be a community asset?
Stephen, how quickly can you get a solid draft of the restrictions together?
Well, I mean, it sounds that the most recent version I have been recorded since September. I haven't heard from town council except through Christie that they're not in proper form, but I'm happy to make any changes. I have attorneys also who are happy to, make changes. I don't know what the deficiencies are.
Okay.
So if
This
I
is-
could suggest, oh, I'm sorry, Madam
Please,
Chair.
go ahead, please.
So I would recommend that you have your council submit to the trust a request for us to review the deed restriction. And I can work with your, work through your attorney. I cannot at this time, though, promise you that I'm going to have responses and have, even if I make comments, I generally have to go back to the trust in order to be able to review them with them. They have meetings and schedules. So, it becomes, it's not as simple as just me looking at the documents and then responding. I need their approval, their input, and then they also have meetings. They have to be posted. There's a number of things that we have to comply with. It's not just, it's not just two individuals working with each other because they are a municipal board. So,
Well, through you, Madam Chair, why is the trust the body that needs to authorize town council to review these restrictions? I wouldn't imagine that the trust would hold the enforcement, would they? Wouldn't that be the select board?
not necessarily. The trust is able to hold restrictions. And they, there are provisions for them to, in the future, to hold restrictions. So it's not necessarily the select board that would hold the restriction. And again, that's a question for the trust and the select board to perhaps work out. So there's issues. It's not quite as simple and straightforward as just designating one board or the other. And who's going to fund this? So if you're coming to the trust, is the trust going to fund it? And then, aren't they going to be the holders of the restrictions? I mean, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah,
The matter of funding and restrictions are separate.
Hold on a second. They may be separate legally, but the trust has not funded things without understanding what they're funding. And the restrictions would be part, I believe, of understanding fully where that town money is going. So I don't think they are completely separate at all. That's
Well, they are separate because you explained at the beginning of the meeting that the trust isn't in a position to commit funding before town meeting.
That's right.
But I have committed at public meetings that voters would understand, for instance, the total number of dwellings on the site.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a restriction that needs to be hard and fast before town meeting. But if I'm hearing that, I can't do that because town council isn't able to, commit to reviewing
I'm sorry,
restrictions for
Stephen,
that.
I think you're conflating the two. I think in a perfect world, there would be a set of restrictions prior to town meeting that had been agreed or reviewed by town council, whether it was for the trust, the select board, the community at large. just so that you would have more information going into town meeting. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? No?
I don't understand what the distinction is you're trying to draw.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
If I may add one other thing. So the restriction that was put on last time before town meeting never reached my desk. I was told it was recorded and then there was town meeting. I mean, I never saw it until after it was recorded. So, you know,
Which
if
is-
I had been consulted prior to that, I could have offered, you know, comments.
We're getting off track a little bit here because Stephen Moore, as a private developer, he didn't need any town review of those restrictions. If he's coming and asking the town or a town entity to support this project in any way, financial or otherwise, my point, Stephen, is we will need more information prior, at least this committee will, prior to making a decision about that. And the restrictions are a piece of that additional information. That was the point I was making. Okay. All right, do you want to keep on with your presentation and then we'll take more questions from the board and the public, or how do you want to do this?
No,
Okay. All right, then I'd like to open it up for then questions from any of the public, members of the public that are in attendance. If you'd like to ask a question, make a comment, please raise your hand. If you can digitally, if you can't, just read it. No.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Art. Yep.
Thank you. I'll make a very brief comment. I just want to express my appreciation to Mr. Maury for continuing to work with the neighborhood and, you know, trying to get some affordable housing on the books here and make a project that works. And I think that what he just went over with you, if it were to remain on septic as described, and there was a, you know, sort of a public-private partnership, is really what was envisioned back when Mr. Glidden and Mr. Atherton, I think, first proposed the funding. You know, that affordable housing kind of you could do these things and sprinkle them around without really changing characters of neighborhood. So I really think that, you know, what he just reviewed is sort of a potential for a good path forward. As opposed to, I do remain concerned. This is something that we have, you know, as Mr. Maury referenced, have had discussions. Bringing sewer in adds another level of complexity and potential concerns with the changing of character and density and those sort of things. But I think that, you know, if there was a way forward with, you know, what was just discussed, understanding that the devil's in the details and that things need to be worked out, but not to hash that. That's just my general sense, and just wanted to express that, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. Thank you. Okay, anybody else from the public? Okay.
Yes,
So, I'm sorry?
I have my hand
Ann,
raised.
I'm sorry. I
Yes,
couldn't see you. Ann Kutzpa,
That's
Housing.
right. Yes. Thank you for taking my comment here. First off, just wanted to applaud Mr. Maury and the neighbors for continuing to work together to come up with solutions that work for everybody. And I think that's really important to provide a variety of types of housing for the community, because it's not all a cookie cutter solution for every family. So I think that that's great. So also wanted to appreciate the Affordable Housing Trust for considering these kind of proposals in the early stages so that we can work with developers to create the housing we need. And I guess mostly, I think it's important to have tiers of affordability, and the number that was kind of thrown out, the $500 per square foot number. Now that we have a year-round deed restriction, we have 240 AMI levels, 150 AMI, 80% AMI, that subsidy I would hope would be a range of subsidy depending on the type of deed restriction that we're able to record. And finally, just wanted to express interest from Housing Nantucket to assist in any way that we can to help monitor these restrictions once they're in place and then review them also as they're being considered by town council. Anything that we can do to help, we would like to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cuspa. I'd like to just follow up by saying we, as a community, in my opinion, need to be doing more to address people in the up to the 240, the attainable level. I think there's been a perhaps disproportionate initially focus on those at the lower levels. Part of that is the shy conversation, the shy list, but I think we absolutely need to be doing more, and I think it's going to have to be the private sector that answers this in concert with public funding. So thank you. Anybody else?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Tom Dixon.
just a couple, just 3 quick points. Also, in our calculus for all this is shy list concern, the subsidized housing inventory list concerns, and at certain MI level is not going to allow for us to have those units. So that is a unique calculation since we are on such a tight time frame to stay in safe harbor and have the funding, et cetera, for all the projects we need. That is one concern. My second point would be that in absence of a funding stream, although we do, and thank you to the voters for allowing us to have it, the override that allows us to do some of these projects, the long-term funding stream for affordable housing and year-round deed restrictions and things like lease to locals is in question because the state is not in a position at the moment to allow us to have that. The transfer fee has been attempted for over a decade now, unsuccessfully. So these are some major questions that we have moving forward. And my third would be in our select board packet for Wednesday, at the end is a town admin departmental update. And on number 3 in there is a slide on the real estate office and how much work is going on. And things like easements, title searches, encroachments, filings, land court registrations, acquisition evaluations. There is so much going on. And the town Tracy has a new colleague, Bob, who I believe is on the meeting, who is very busy with all these things. So it's the ability to simply drop things. It bubbles, as Brooke said one time in a meeting, is like if you push something else, if you push on something, it bubbles out the other side. So that there's just a lot going on at the moment. So anyway, I just wanted to point out those things that are unique challenges of all the things we're working on.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that we are always planning ahead, and in terms of staying in safe harbor, we've planned right now through 2027. And it looks like, barring some disaster, we will be able to stay in safe harbor. By 2027, we should have reached our 10%. And that then the importance of creating those 32 units a year or whatever that number is by then, it becomes less important. I just want to throw that out there. But it's not like we're sitting around with a bunch of money that hasn't already been allocated or committed to certain things going forward. That's not a judgment, it's just a statement of fact. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Tracy, you have your hand up. Tracy McDonald.
I want to just mention a couple different things. One is, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and I do think we need different levels of housing, and I do support this type of, niche for the people who might qualify for it. Some may know or may not know that I worked on Abram Quarry, Sachem's Path, Rugged Road. They are all different projects. They are not all the same. Abram Quarry was the first of its kind at that time. And the deed restriction in that neighborhood, which was sort of leveled, there are affordable homes in there that are on the shy list. And then there were different levels of income qualification and sort of a lottery system to have attainable housing. And that restriction ran through the comprehensive permit to the HOA, which was an incredible burden. I was trustee. I was lucky enough to have a home in there when I was married. And then I remained trustee long after I had to sell it. And I only resigned as trustee there last year. But the having to maintain and enforce the restriction through the HOA on its own was incredibly burdensome. The restriction should run either to a monitoring agent or to the town or some other, type of enforcement agency that can track it and properly enforce it, because otherwise you start getting people who want to sell and, they get all kinds of offers and not everybody reads all the fine print or the documentation or anything like that. So, and we will have a lot more options through our seasonal communities designation. And I think that's important to note that the EOHLC will be releasing guidelines on these type of restrictions. And maybe through that support, we can do this the right way out the gate versus trying to come up with something in a hurry that in the future is problematic. So that's just my advice.
All great points. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else on this? All right, Stephen, what I'm hearing is support generally for what you've come up with here, because it doesn't require a zoning change or the sewer, and we'll have to see where we are from a financial standpoint post town meeting. Okay. Thank you so much for coming again.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the annual town meeting communications subcommittee update and discussion. The committee is Ellis, Abby Danilina, and Chantal Blas Murphy. So who wants to tell us what you 3 have been up to? Abby?
Only 2 of us with Florencia
Yeah.
have been up to.
Oh, okay.
Because Shanta has been on vacation, but Abby's gonna take away from this.
Okay.
She has
Yeah.
Thank you.
If
Go ahead.
everyone's okay with it. I'm just gonna give kind of like a verbal overview. So, Ellis and I we had a really good conversation with Florencia and came up with like a game plan for what we wanted to do. So what we've kind of landed on is the first thing we want to do is come up with like a 1-page fact sheet. And I know we had all talked about it. I think, I had mocked up a version, but it turns out, which is great, the town has an intern who is doing all of their, it's a graphic designer. This is his specialty. I'm sure he's better at it than any of us would be. And so what our plan is, once everyone agrees on what we want the content to be, what we think those, couple of quick bullets, metrics that we want to share, what we can do is we're just going to send that over to Florencia and her team, and they should be able to turn that around pretty quickly. And I think what we said is, we definitely want to have this out. One of the things that we talked about adding to it is a QR code so people can scan it. And what we all said is we definitely wanted this before town meeting so we can have this information, have it out there. Another thing we talked about was having a kind of ad campaign and discussed where, having ads and like the current Inky, some of those things, that's a little pricey, but we thought that that would be kind of good money well spent. Again, making sure that we get the right message out. So that's something that we kind of all agreed we would be aligned with. I think we just as an organization just need to agree on like what we want. I think the thought is the ad would be just a shorter version if we come up with like a tagline or whatever, or shorter version, or maybe our top metric would be part of whatever those ads would be, but it would be kind of aligned with whatever our fact sheet is. And then the last thing we talked about was doing a couple of quick videos, and it would just be like 30 seconds. The idea is you can film them on your phone, nothing crazy, but highlighting some of our programs and the benefits. And so the next steps for that is what we just need to do is figure out a couple of people. I've reached out to some people we haven't reached out to yet, Boris, but we might, if you'd be willing. But what we're gonna do with that is write up a quick script, and then again, we would share it with Florencia. She said she'd happy to collaborate with us on that. And then we would be able to amplify those on the town socials. We did talk about creating kind of separate socials for the trust, but we kind of need to come up with like a more long-term sustainable communication plan before we do that. So in terms of like, if we want to do these videos right away, we'll do those on the town socials. But if we come up with like a more robust plan of what our comms would be, we could then discuss how we could create our own channel and what would go on it and what would be the cadence and stuff like that. So the kind of short-term thing is getting our wording and scripts and sending that over to Florencia, and then we can kind of go from there. But she did think our timeline was pretty doable. So
Thank you. So two sort of clarifications. When you're talking about the videos, you're talking about people whose lives have been impacted by programs funded by the trust. Okay?
correct.
Could be somebody that had closing cost assistance, could be somebody in a Habitat house, could be somebody who's going to be able to rent at Wiggles, right?
Yep, exactly. So I think the thoughts we had was talking to somebody who had benefited from closing cost assistance. I have a name I think Brooke gave me, someone who did Habitat and who is on the trust, whoever that person may be. And then another was somebody from Wiggles. I think someone had actually approached us about a person who has one of the assistance units, and just talking with them again, just quickly about how the trust helped them, like, you know, really high level, but kind of putting a face out there, I think would be great, especially seeing people within our community, because Forrest, you obviously see a ton of kids every day, you see their families, and then, you know, people realizing like, oh, hey, this is someone I live with, as opposed to just being kind of like an, you know, abstract concept of they might not know the person.
There's something else at play here, which is one of the recipients of an accessible unit at Wiggles is a person who is a key employee for a local business. And that local business owner was sharing with me that that person was going to have to move off island, which would have impacted her business in a very significant way. So there's sort of layers to the stories that can be told here. In terms of the message, we've been talking for months now about how important it is that we refine the clarity of what has actually been accomplished, that we've created, last night was 129 units that are permanently deed restricted. And we have another 179 out, you know, for our either RFPs or that will be developed, including Tacoma. And where we are with Safe Harbor, we have to distill those numbers down into an easily understood message for the community. Because just because it's not so visible and it's scattered site, which is how it should be, people are not, they are thinking that we are not delivering what we're supposed to do, which of course is false. So that would be my 2 cents on that. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Thank you for getting on this so early and being proactive.
Forrest has his hand.
Forrest, I'm sorry, your hand is up. Yes, go ahead.
Only if it's good though, Forrest.
You gotta unmute. Only if it's good.
Thank you so much, Abby and Ellis, for working on this. This looks great, by the way. I was looking over this on the materials. I would be more than happy to contribute. I really enjoy doing this kind of stuff, and anything, you know, from a PR standpoint, anything to kind of like get the community on board with our general mission is positive, and I would be more than happy to you know, film a short clip, explain how it's impacted my life. And you're right, I do have a lot of contact with island families through my job as a teacher and many years as a teacher. And you know, I'm always spreading the good word about what the trust does. So thank you, Abby, for thinking of me. I did have one question through you, Vice Chair. This is just a draft, correct?
It's just a draft.
Oh, yeah, it was just a mock-up. I think
So-
like I said, the graphic designer will make it look fancy and consistent. It was just the idea of like, we'd want to have 1 or 2 photos of one of our, projects, have kind of like a larger tagline and then kind of smaller, but it is by no means like a final product or anything.
So, Abby, would it be too ambitious to suggest that something is available for us to look at the meeting on March 18th to get input from the trust?
No, I mean, if we can work quickly on scripts
Yeah.
and send them to Florencia, then we could and
I was sorry, I wasn't clear. I was talking about like the physical thing to look at.
oh, okay, so for that,
I
I guess the only thing for this one is we just need to all agree what we think the facts should be.
the facts are what they are. It should be.
Well, yeah, I used the old version of the fact sheet.
That's
I
like-
think it's from October 2024, so I
Yeah,
don't
so
know. who
I would like
updated
to,
that.
I would like to suggest that somebody, you or Tracy or somebody connect with Christy. Christy is coming back at some point in April before town meeting. I also would like to suggest that whatever we come up with gets included in the next report. She does quarterly reports to the select board. I think that's a very good way to get the word out there. So yeah, I think we need a plan, what's happening each week between now and town meeting. How are we getting the word out there? What source of funding are we using to distribute this digitally? Who's making the little short films? And I gotta tell you, 30 seconds is a long time on film. Hold on 1 second, please. Like 20 seconds is probably gonna be adequate. You try and talk, it's hard.
I defer to your
Oh my gosh.
judgment, Penny.
No, I only know.
We just
Anyway,
threw that
Ellis?
number out there. It could be
Yeah.
anything.
Okay, thank you. Ellis, you have,
That's what I was gonna say, Penny. We can use Christie's quarterly updates. It's like they're always very up to date on what the trust has done, and the numbers are always accurate. So
Okay.
we can combine them. Well, we don't even have to combine them, honestly. We can just get the last one that she does or that we're gonna work on and use that as.
okay. but
And
then-
also, we're gonna go back to doing the newsletter.
Okay, and also you talk about the updates, like just today, Tracy had some more updates for us that wouldn't have been up. So let's just make sure we're completely up to date as
Yeah.
of today, April 1st or something, okay? Not only should it be in the quarterly update to the select board whenever Christie does that again, but it should also be in the town manager's report that she sends out that has a robust subscription list. Yes, Mary Mack.
Yeah, thanks for letting me just make a quick comment. I think you guys are doing a great job, and this community outreach idea is awesome. And I would also just add, I mean, it's of course up to you, that maybe in the outreach you could include like frequently asked questions. It's also known as frequently voiced criticisms, because there are going to be people that are just like, they just will tend to go to the negative.
Yep.
And so just maybe, because you guys have heard it all before, why does it take so long? Why is there still none of this? Da, 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 da. And there are good reasons for it. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. That's a great point. I actually, we did talk about that with Florencia, and that is something we're going to add. I would lean towards calling it FAQ as opposed to frequently voiced criticisms to keep it
a little
neutral.
cheeky, the other one, but
Yeah.
Abby, you may end up doing a two-sided thing.
Yeah, well, and we can do, I mean, I think Florencia thought no matter what, we should have an FAQ that lives on the website too.
Yep.
And so like we can do different iterations. We can do like a one pager, we can do like two-sided and have the FAQ on the back. So I think there's a bunch of different things. I think though that's a good point. And Mary, thank you for reminding us that we should start to gather some of those like questions or themes that come up and make sure that we have good talking points for it. So all of that is great.
I'd like to see some sort of iteration that each of us, when Forrest was talking about his reach into his work community, each of us has that in different ways. I'd like to have something that I could circulate digitally to people. Well before
Yeah,
time.
I think
Not like the week before, but like some weeks before.
I agree. I think that's our goal, is having that kind of PDF that would be able to be circulated digitally. I do think we can have something printable as well,
Yep.
but I think we definitely felt like having something digital, easy to send out, having a landing page with from the QR code, I think would be great too. So that's the direction we're looking to go in.
Thank you, everybody, for the good work and the good comments. All right, next on the agenda is other business, which is anything, I think that's anything else somebody's burning to talk about that's appropriate. Okay, seeing no hands. Our next meeting is March the 18th at 12:30. Let's make sure that this item about the subcommittee, communication subcommittee, is on the agenda for that meeting. Actually, for every meeting between now and town meeting, please. March 18th, 12:30, April 1st at 12:30. And then are there any board comments, which I don't really know how that's different than other business, but there we go. Board comments? No, thank you. Vicky, welcome back. It's so nice to see your face again. And
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, happy to help and offer advice anytime I can.
Thank you.
Enjoy working with all of you.
Yeah.
And you all do such good work too.
Well, thank you. I don't have the language. Does anybody have the language in front of them about going into executive session? I could probably try and wing it. Alice, do you have the language?
I do have the language.
Would
You want me
mind
to read it for you?
And then somebody can say they want to make a motion, please. If you don't mind reading it.
It's purpose 7 to comply with or an act under the authority of any general or special law, open meeting law, to approve executive session minutes from January 21st to February 21st, 2025. And also purpose 6 to consider the purpose exchange, lease, or value of real property located at 9 Goldfinch Drive, where an open meeting law have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body.
No, sorry, I didn't realize it was right there. I could have read it. Okay, thank you. Does
I'll
somebody
make
wanna-
that motion, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, first. By roll call vote, all those in favor, Forrest?
Aye.
Thank you. Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Megan Browers?
Aye.
Thank you. And Abby De Molina? Okay, while we're waiting for Abby, the chair votes aye, so we have enough to vote on this. And I wanted to check, is the only thing in executive session this particular property? Okay, I'm gonna tag Tom Dixon to run executive session. I have a conflict on this particular property.
And
Could you stay just to vote for the minutes, please, Penny?
Yeah, so the vote was 4 in favor. Abby, are you back yet? No, she's indisposed. 4 in favor, 1 abstention. It was me, Tom Dixon, Forrest Bell, and Megan Browers in favor. Okay,
No, I was asking if you could stay for the executive session minutes to vote on them.
oh, so you want me to come into executive session? Yes, okay,
Yes.
okay. Have a little stretch, see you on the other side. Oh, motion to adjourn, whoops, we gotta do that, sorry, I forgot.
So moved.
Thank you so much, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Tom Dixon,
Aye.
and Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Abby De Molina. And the chair votes aye. It's enough. That's enough to adjourn. Okay. See you on the other side. Thank you.